ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Is it helpful to think of the body-mind sense upadhi as a vantage point only, like a circle of mirrors surrounding the self in the middle? Try to better understand how to see consciousness as one despite many minds. It's not a circle of mirrors surrounding the self. I would say each upadhi is like a mirror. And each mirror cannot be there without the self. It's not like the mirror is dissociated from the self. Consciousness is being mirrored. That is one explanation of upadhi, according to what is called pratibimba vada, the so-called understanding of reflected consciousness reflected in the buddhi, and the buddhi becomes the upadhi for that consciousness. So the buddhi in which is blessed by consciousness because it's a sattvic instrument. So this buddhi blessed by consciousness is not away from consciousness. So that we have to see. It's not like a circle of mirrors with consciousness somewhere in the middle. It's like consciousness is in and through all the mirrors, and then in between the spaces in the mirrors also, what is there is consciousness. Okay? Yes. Then, Vivarta Karana and Parinama Karana. Yes, I will explain. In the afternoon, you discussed the lived experience of alienation in which people place emphasis on hurtful negative interactions which lead to disconnection from Brahman and other jivas. Why do we have this negativity bias? Why don't we naturally place emphasis on positive, connective experiences? Well, not to overuse the situation, it's because of Atma Ajnanam. What else can we say? It's because I don't know my glory. And I don't know I'm actually connected with everything. I don't know I'm whole. I don't know I'm free. I don't know those things. And so, if I don't know those things, it's one thing, but I take myself to be what I am not. This is part 2. And that is why there are these, it is very easy to focus on challenging experiences, difficulties. Because when there are good things that are happening, one doesn't notice. One takes it for granted, like, yeah, of course. You woke up in the morning and you recognized where you were. That's not taken as a good thing. That's a great thing. And you had your breakfast, you didn't swallow the wrong way and didn't go into a conniption. That's a very good thing. We don't notice it, we take it for granted. And then, like this, the whole day goes. So many things happen which are wonderful, but we don't notice them because we feel entitled to them. And of course, life should be like this. If anything slightly goes wrong, what do we say? Oh no, this is not happening. Oh no, why me? This is the favorite refrain. Why me? Why is it happening to me? It should happen to somebody else. It should be happening to you. Why is it happening to me? And so, it's not that good things are not happening. It's just that there is one becomes a sadness magnet. And in fact, the third definition of yoga is to not give into that. The 21st verse of the 6th chapter says, Tam vidyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam sanishchayena yoktavyaha yogo nirvinna chetasa. So what is yoga? Dukkha samyoga viyoga is the practice of yoga. Dissociation from association with sorrow, because there is some kind of a natural affinity appears to be. Even though we are seeking happiness, what happens? There's kind of a natural affinity for sorrow. Not affinity, but that's going too far, but some kind of a magnetic pull where sorrow is concerned. And so therefore, this practice of cutting off, that's why I keep saying, keep a pocket full of full stops. Keep them in the pocket and take it out and put when the downward spiral is going. Why me? Full stop. Oh, but it's in the middle of the sentence. You can't put full stop. Doesn't matter, put full stop. So this way we train ourselves, because the Pujya Swamiji used to always say, it's the sad person who becomes sad. Already sad person becomes sad. Already sad means what? Already in this way of associating with sorrow, and that association must be questioned. It helps, the doctors and the therapists will say, to keep a gratitude journal, because it's all in the attitude of gratitude. So to keep a gratitude journal is important. What is going well, what is wonderful, so that one can focus a little more on the pleasant by turning to the present. So karana, there are two kinds of, not two karanas, but the karana from two standpoints. When we see Maya as karana, we say parinami karana, because the raw material has what? Become the Jagat. And then that is parinami karana, parinami upadana karana. Whereas when we look at Brahman, Satchidanandam Brahma, that has not gone a change as it manifests as the Jagat, so it is called Vivarta Upadana Karanam. That's all. So something that undergoes a change is called Parinami, that is usually Maya Shakti, and the other one is called what? Vivarta. Vivarta means, is short for Vividham Vartate. So Vividham Vartate is manifest in various forms. How? Swarupa aparityagena, without giving up its nature. Whereas Maya Shakti gives up its nature to become the raw material in that sense, because there is no difference between her and the raw material, and so therefore that is parinami. She manifests as the raw material, and here Brahman undergoes no change. All the change is at the level of Maya. So Maya Shakti parinami karanam, and Brahman vivarta karanam. Atma, covered by Avarana Shakti. Is it the same Maya referred to by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita? Yes. What is Maya? Maya is a power. Ishvara's power, that makes Ishvara all powerful, omniscient, and invests this Ishvara with rulership, overlordship, etc. The same Maya, when it faces the ajnanam of the jiva, makes the jiva suffer by taking itself to be and by identifying itself as finite. And so that is called Avarna Shakti, and that is removed with exposure to the teachings of Vedanta. And when that happens, there is no Avarna, and you are able to appreciate Maya without coming under her spell. That is the idea. Maya doesn't need to be removed, she needs to be what? Understood. That's the thing. Does Aikshat mean seeing as well as desiring? I think it's more seeing, visualizing. Because nowhere in any of the commentaries we have this concept of desiring associated with ikshate. What is the role of chants? Are they antahkarana shuddhi? Are they for antahkarana shuddhi? Yes. And it's prayer. When you pray, that it gives punya, because you're not robbing a bank at that time. So it is very good. Prayer is good karma, it gives punya. The chants are powerful, ancient, so they have an immersive quality. You just become one with them and you shut off the mind that is always dwelling on the unpleasant. That's a very nice way to spend the time. And then it gives punya and inoculates against papa. And so these are the benefits of the prayer. Or should we approach it as though we are honoring ourselves through the chants? You can do that also, no problem. Just say, this is all for me, this is wonderful. We can do that. How is Nandi Ananda? Please repeat the explanation. I have a recollection of Nandi being explained as tamas. No, you see, it's like that. Matva or Jnatva Nandi Bhavati. Jnatva Nandi Bhavati. So there's a A there. It's not really Nandi. It is Anandi Bhavati. Anandin. Anandaha asya asti iti. The one who has Ananda. So, Nandi Bhavati, Anandi Bhavati. Rasaghyevayam labdhva, gaining oneself as the juiciest thing in the whole world, where all the happiness resides. One does not really become Nandi. That was a joke. What does one become? Anandi. That's what it is. Is Maya put together, comprised of components such as sattva, rajas, tamas, malina, shuddha forms? Can the gunas said to be constitute a sharira for Maya? Does Sat enter into Maya to confer sentience and animation? Yes, to all of them. Yes, it is put together, and yes, it has different parts, moving parts. What are they? Sattva, rajas, tamas. And can the gunas said to be a sharira? Yes, it's expressed through gunas. Ajnanam is also a sharira. Jnanam is also a sharira, depending on what you're talking about. Okay? Yes. And then, what else? Does Sat enter into? Sat doesn't have to enter into Maya. It is one, Maya is one with Sat. So definitely it is mithya, a dependent reality. It is dependent on Sat. And Sat confers sentience, animation to Maya. Yes, because Maya is insentient. How is it that some are liberated just by hearing you are that, while others struggle for years? It's not fair, is it? Yeah. Doesn't seem fair at all. Why do these things keep happening to me? That's the question that arises. It's not that, some people immediately know. In fact, in Kali Yuga, it says nobody knows, very few people know. Why? Because there is a lot of blocks. Social blocks, individual level blocks, psychological blocks, all kinds of blocks are there. And somebody said you should not study Vedanta at all in Kali Yuga. Kalau kalmasha chittanam papadravya upajivinam vidhikriya vihinanam harer namaiva kevalam. Or it has a pathabheda, gatir govinda kirtanam. Means the same thing. Either you take the name of Hari or you take the name of Govinda. What's the difference? No difference. Just two different names. So Kalau, in Kali Yuga, what is happening? Kalmasha chittanam. Kalmasha chittanam means whose antahkaranas are full of problems, big time problems, full of ashuddhis, raga, dvesha, moha, lobha, mada, matsarya. All of these are there. And besides, whatever be our livelihood, it is producing papa. Because we have all the companies owned by a few people, whether you talk in India or America or any country, few people somehow keep getting rich, and all the companies are owned just by them. And then even if you're not working directly for them, you're working for some subsidiary of this company. And then so any kind of papa they do, it's kind of trickle-down effect will be there, in the sense that we are participating in the papa to get our livelihood. Papa dravya upajivina. And then vidhikriya vihinana. No discipline. Who does Agnihotra? Raise your hand. See? Yeah. Nobody is doing Agnihotra, daily karma. Nobody is even doing a puja. Very few people do puja even. So nitya karmas, gone. Naimittika karma, gone. Kamya karma, yes. Kamya karma is the only thing that's up in Kali Yuga. Everything else is down. What is up? Kamya karma is up. What is kamya karma? Things I want to do in order to get something in return, some desirable objects. Then Nishiddha karma, also up. Things that I should not be doing, what am I doing? Doing them double time in Kali Yuga. So then, Prayashchitta karma, atonement actions, up or down? Way down. Yeah. Because each one says, why should I apologize? I was forced to do this because the situation is like this. I'm not going to apologize. So Nishiddha karma down, Nitya karma, Naimittika karma down, and then Kamya karma up, Prayashchitta karma down. So this is the kind of, there is no vidhi, there is no kriya. What to do, what to not do is not there. Nobody is following. And then for such people in Kali Yuga, only redemption is to sing, chant the name of Hari, Govinda. That's all we can do. Somebody said that. That's not quite true, because we are here and we are studying. In fact, there was Kali Yuga even in Adi Shankara's time. Since that time we have been saying Kali Yuge, Prathame Pade in all our sankalpas. So even then, people were studying Vedanta. Now also they are studying Vedanta. But you can agree with the writer of this verse saying that it is difficult. Before we rose with the sun, we slept with the sun. It was very easy. And there were no devices to distract us. All these devices were not there. And so it was easy to study. There was a value for moksha. Everybody was doing it together. Here everybody is sitting in their room on Zoom. And so, so it is little difficult. So in Kali Yuga it is difficult to study, yes, but that doesn't mean we must not study. That doesn't mean that this knowledge must not be imbibed. And so when this knowledge is imbibed, what will happen? You will gain the knowledge. And it doesn't matter whether you gain it today or tomorrow or in the next life. It doesn't matter. The tendency is to compare ourselves to others and say, this one is seeming to do well. How do you know they are doing well? How do you know that they are enlightened? They may just be pretending, walking like this, Yeah. Whether you ask for blessings or not, they are blessing. And so therefore, how do you know whether they are enlightened or not? We don't know. They seem to get it, okay. They might just be saying they got it, or they may get it. But we don't worry about other people getting it. We worry about what? Ourselves getting it. That is what is most important. And so when we are concerned about ourselves getting it, it will fruition, it will fructify. But right now, what happens is that one is focused on other people getting it or not getting it, and thereby one does not think about one's own progress. It's also difficult to chart one's own progress spiritually. So for that, we can say, if we have and when we have the mastery to just be and accommodate whatever comes and deal with whatever comes, then we can say we are closer and closer to moksha. This is also a paradox, because what is moksha? That which we have attained already. And that we have to know. So we don't worry about other people's progress. Is it because of prarabdha, lack of purification? Lessons need to be learned, lived through. Yeah, you can say that. And those who got liberated after listening once, what is that? That is also prarabdha? Yes. They have done karma yoga in other lives. We can say that. Then, Malina Satya, not Malina Satya, Malina Sattva. So the Sattva, which is there in Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, morphs into Shuddha and Malina. Malina means impure. Associated with Ajnana, it is considered impure. Associated with all knowledge, it is considered pure. So this Malina Sattva is what goes into the makeup of Maya, which covers the understanding of the Jiva. That's why it is so rampant, and the effects of it, and that's why it has to be removed. Then I'm thoroughly immersed in this yajna. One thing I have some less understanding. Since Advaita gives importance to cognitive changes through nididhyasana, how crucial is attaining the state of savikalpa or nirvikalpa samadhi. How crucial is. Yeah, nididhyasana is not savikalpa or nirvikalpa samadhi. So nididhyasana is contemplating on what? On our own nature. Not the complaining nature. That if you contemplate on what you will get? Headache, migraine. And then what will happen when I get the migraine? I'll complain about it. And so, so therefore, the practice here, nididhyasana, is to be able to overcome any feelings that I'm not Brahman enough, I'm not good enough, I don't have this knowledge. Even though I have this knowledge, if you don't have this knowledge, it's a different thing. But the person has the knowledge but feels like they are not behaving like Brahman. And so therefore, that gap has to be, as it were, bridged. That is why nididhyasana is encouraged. We are doing some of that in the meditations. We are doing that. And then savikalpa samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, we don't bother about. Because that's something spontaneously, if it is meant to happen, it will happen. But that too is not atmajnanam. That too is just an experience. That too you come into and go out of. You don't stay there. Because all it takes is somebody to ring the bell. Then you can say, I was in moksha for half an hour, and then I came back. So what comes and goes, what rises and falls, what is it that rises and falls? Yes, Kundalini. It sounds like an Italian pasta. Okay, yes. And all this, you don't bother. That which is stable, that which is steady, and here nididhyasana, the practice of nididhyasana is not to go into samadhi, is to understand the one who is trying to understand the samadhi. That is the one. Are we done? Looks like it. Yeah, all done. Every single one of them has been answered. I guess not. Okay. Not mine. This is the collective. Collective. Yes. No, but this is not about the mind. You see, the Malina Sattva is not associated with any individual mind. We are talking of collectively, the sattvic element which is in association with ajnanam is called Malina Sattva. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. The idea, you're thinking of it as from the standpoint of an individual mind or antahkarana shuddhi. No. Yes. Yes, that's different. Mind and intellect have to be pure so that because of this antahkarana shuddhi, you get ready for this knowledge and one is able to assimilate this knowledge. You don't have to achieve, that's not antahkarana shuddhi, you're confusing, So, you're confusing what is on a, the part of this cosmic creation cosmology, the creation cosmology at the global cosmic level, with the individual need for purifying the mind to be able to assimilate this knowledge. The two have nothing to do with one another. Yeah. Yeah. That's because what you are already what you seek. It has to be instantaneous. There is no need for a time gap. There is no time gap, because if I show you a flower and your eyes are open and it's clear, there is no cataract, you are able to see it. So knowledge, when the pramana is there, and then when that which is to be seen is there, then what happens? Sight takes place. Should take place. So here also I am able to see. But since the antakarana is full of various kinds of notions, those notions as though cloud, the sun-like knowledge, and then repeatedly they fog up or cloud, and then they have to be removed. Yes, yes, you keep exposing yourself to the teaching so that there is a gradual sloughing off of all the notions that one held dear. Starting with oneself, the body, the mind, about everything we have a notion. So it's the knowledge is not, it's not that we don't know, we know, but then that knowledge is vitiated by, inhibited by all these other things. That's why we have to purify in order to get ready to assimilate this. And so jnanam takes place, but what we need is jnana nishtha, the abidance in this knowledge. Yes. Golden ornament. Yeah. Yes. Yes. As though modification. Yeah. Yes, everything is consciousness. It's not a practice. It's not a practice, because this is where we start thinking Vedanta is a theory, and then after studying, what we have to do? Practice. Vedanta is neither a theory nor is it a practice. What is it? It is a means of knowing. And just like you see the gold, in and through what? Every single ornament. In the same way, it's harder to see Brahman because Brahman is not an object like gold is, first of all. And secondly, gold is away from you, but Brahman is what? You. That is why it poses, if we are looking for Brahman, then it poses the difficulty, leading Saint Kabir to compose a couplet. Lehri dhoonde leher ko, kapda dhoonde सूत. जीव ढूंढे ब्रह्म को, तीनों ऊत के ऊत. Út means fool. Okay? Foolish, mudha, deluded. So the wave is looking for the water, and then wave is looking for the ocean, the fabric is looking for the yarn, and then we laugh when we hear these two things. But the jiva is looking for Brahman. And all three are fools, because what is the wave other than water? Nothing. What is the fabric other than yarn? Nothing. What is jiva other than Brahman? Nothing else but Brahman. And so instead of looking for Brahman, or just like you look for gold, or seeing Brahman in and through objects, we cannot see because it is you. So, there is a different tactic. There is a two-step tactic that we have to follow. The easiest way to do it is to first Ishvarize the whole universe. Forget Brahman, see Ishvara, or understand the world as Ishvara. Here an Ishvara, there an Ishvara, everywhere Ishvara, Ishvara. And who is seeing this? Old Mac Jiva. Okay, is seeing Ishvara everywhere. Everywhere you see what? Ishvara only. Wherever you go, you see Ishvara. Whatever happens, you see Ishvara there. Means a worshipful encounter with the universe. With any aspect of the universe, you have a worshipful encounter. And if it's not worshipful inherently, you make it worshipful. You see the beauty of it by seeing the inevitability of it. So that's what brings in Ishvaratvam. That's what brings in Ishvaraness, when you see the inevitability of how it could not have been. This is how it is. And that's what makes it worshipful. No, that's a different thing. Let me just talk to her, then I will take your question. So therefore, you see everything as Ishvara. Your own body is Ishvara, your mind is Ishvara, your omissions and commissions are also what? Ishvara. Other people's omissions and commissions against you, what are they? Ishvara. Everything is Ishvara. And then, what is the first step? Ishvara is the entire universe of names and forms. And then, after that, that is the first step. The second step is to see that Ishvara as non-separate from I, myself. And then the world becomes an extension of you. So wherever it is you alone. Everything is me. This is embodied in the Sri Rudram mantra very beautifully. First it is Namaha, Namaha. And it is not me, it is you. The whole universe of names and forms is you. There are 300 Namahas in the Sri Rudram. Namaha, 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 Namaha. And every single thing is taken. Unto the dried leaves, Namaha. Shushkyaya Namaha. And then unto the wet leaves, after the rains, which are fallen, composted leaves, unto that Namaha. Unto the dry river beds, Namaha. Unto the river beds which have water, Namaha. You see how it is consciously Ishvarizing the entire universe. This is what is called the first part of the Rudram, called Namakam. Then what is the other part called? Chamakam. Everything chame, chame, chame means it's already mine, it's already mine, it's already mine. So you see there, you just see you everywhere. I see me everywhere. And that's the second level of growth. And so this is how to assimilate this knowledge. Does that make sense? Yeah. What was your question? Of course, you have to see everything as Ishvara. I didn't talk about Papa Punya. Oh, in general, what was that about Papa Punya? Because you have to go against yourself in order to commit adharma. Because the natural tendency is to go towards dharma. When you go against yourself, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to breach what is right, what you yourself have enshrined as, you yourself means anybody, has enshrined as valuable. Your own values, system, you have to go against. And that causes what is called papa, which means that it is a uncomfortable situation in this or other lives. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants that. And so that's why it is seen as challenging to accept. Especially if it comes back as karma phala, it is challenging to challenging to accept. Now, having said that, papa, punya are also what? Constructs. They are constructs. Ultimately, in the light of Atmajnanam, the papa, punya are just little preparatory steps. Steps to gain antahkarana shuddhi. The karma is a model. And that model is there insofar as one is still connected to, addicted to doership. When you understand you are not the doer, then there is no karma phala. Nothing is there from the standpoint of the Brahman. Nothing is there. Yes. No, I just basically, sometimes I use the breath to just do some nididhyasana. Because without the breath, people get scared. So if they are breathing in, they feel like they are doing something, and so we use some visualizations. That's all it is. Yeah. There is no vyashti samashti. Yeah. Yes? Just like that. Because cash is associated with Vishnu, because he has Lakshmi on his side. Yeah, he's all cash. And you look at Lord Shiva, all ash. Yes. Yeah. That's all I meant. Yeah. Sure. No, there is no name and form. No, everything is Ishvara. Ishvara, you can't, if you can do that, you can, if you have a Ishta Devata, you can say everything is Ganesha, not a problem, but that's not the idea. Ishvara here means that which is inevitable. And that which is inevitable is seen as infallible, is seen as manifest in the form of various orders of reality and various orders. You don't have to dismiss. Why do we have to dismiss anything? You accept, you don't dismiss. It is Ishvara. Right now, just see it as Ishvara. We don't confuse ourselves because you have been given a task to do. And the task is what? To see everything as Bhagavan. Bhagavanize the universe. See Bhagavan, here a Bhagavan, there a Bhagavan, everywhere Bhagavan, Bhagavan. And in Rishikesh, when they come for Sadhu Bhandara, they will not even take the name of food items without the word Ram at the end. So the person who is serving will say Roti Ram, Roti Ram, Roti Ram. You're having roti in the form of Rama. Dal Ram, Dal Ram, Dal Ram. You're having dal in the form of Rama. Or you're having Rama in the form of dal. Sabji Ram, Sabji Ram, Sabji Ram. Kheer Ram, Kheer Ram, Kheer Ram. Like this is how they serve. It's beautiful. Because everything is Bhagavan. Oh, but I'm eating Bhagavan, shame on me. Well, the eater is also what? Bhagavan. Ahamannam, 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 ahamannado, ahamannado, ahamannadaha. This is what the Taittiriya says. Ahamannam, I am Anna. And then this is what the enlightened person in the Taittiriya goes crazy and sings. And aham annadaha, I am the eater of the food, I am the food. Because if I was just the food, then I would feel bad. Everybody, including myself, is eating me up. But here, I am not only the eater of the food, what am I? I am the food, I'm the eater of the food. So you see Ishvara everywhere. Here he says I, he or she, whoever is the enlightened person says I, because they are on the second step. The second step is to see everything as an extension of that one, the one who is one with Ishvara. But right now it's just Ishvara. You don't try to say, are you apparent or real? What is this? You just say everything is Ishvara. And you see everything as holy. You see everything as sacred. That which is inevitable is that which is infallible. That which is infallible is Ishvara. It is how it is because it can't be how it is not. That is Ishvara. Wherever you can't change something, wherever, however it is, that is what is at Ishvara. Yeah. Insecurity is a sense of lack. Yeah. Artha is a sense of lack and the feeling of vulnerability. And kama is again what is that? A sense of incompleteness. Lack is one thing, but then I need something to complete me. Kama is the search for completion. One is insecurity makes you anxious. Kama makes you stubborn to pursue. It directs your pursuit towards that which will stave off the insecurity. Kama, desire. Yes. It makes you stubborn because it's like, I have to have this in order to be okay. Yes, see, the insecurity is almost, see, the way I look at it is when we talk of insecurity, the pursuit is to not be insecure, right? And when we talk of kama, it's to get the object of desire. That's what, is to procure. So one is kind of a proactive pursuit, the kama part, and the other one is to kind of stave off that anguish and that anxiety centered on insecurity. You can say, look at it that way. Insecurity? Yeah, so insecurity means there is a sense of lack, right? So I don't have money, I don't have friends, I don't have this, I don't have that. And that's what makes one insecure. So that's what is the sense of lack. And so the pursuit is what? To block that sense of lack and to overcome somehow that sense of lack. That is the pursuit. Kama is already having certain objects to pursue, thinking that having those objects will make me into something else. More lovable, more acceptable, etc. They are connected. Of course, everything is connected. Yeah, that's what I said. It loops back. It is connected. Everything is connected. They are not separate pursuits. They are interconnected. Yes? Cultivate it. Engage in acts of Shraddha. Then you will have Shraddha. Pranipata, Pariprashna, Seva. Pranipata, doing namaskara. And then Pariprashna, asking questions that are pertinent. Seva, for the Guru, Gurukula, etc. This makes us cultivate Shraddha. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Shraddha is not love. Shraddha is devotion and bhakti towards the teacher and towards the book, the Shastra. No, that is self-love. That is always important. Self-love is there. So, you are right. But roti is non-separate from consciousness. Sadhu is non-separate from consciousness. Yeah. So that we have to understand. They are not Maya. They are Brahman. Yes. Roti is Brahman. Annam brahmeti vyajanat. Annam brahma. No. Brahman is not bhokta karta. Yeah. Roti is Brahman. Maya is Brahman. Brahman is not Maya. Maya is dependent on Brahman. Yeah. See, we can't confuse or conflate two orders of reality. Paramarthataha, from the standpoint of the ultimate reality, there is no roti. There is no Brahman, there is no sadhu, there is no food, there is nothing. There is no act of eating either. But here we are talking of the empirical reality. Because if we were to lead life like that, we couldn't have retreats, because the kitchen will be closed. All right, and who is coming to the retreat? You know, that is, what is the status of the person coming to the retreat? No, that's what we are talking of, the practical level. So you can't confuse what you are calling the practical level with the ultimate level. So the practical level is the lived everyday empirical reality where we have to see everything as Ishvara. That is what Advaita teaches, that there are these orders of reality, and in this order of reality, what happens is that there is confusion. In this roti sadhu reality, this everyday reality, that is where the confusion is. The confusion doesn't lie in everything being Brahman. That is clear. If one knows that, then one can eat as many rotis as one wants, primarily because I know I'm not the eater. I know I'm not the roti, I'm not the sadhu, I'm not the eater, I'm not the eaten. That understanding is there despite of the action. The action becomes as though. Everything becomes as though, because the knowledge is there and the action continues. Pashyan, Shrinvan, Swapan, Shasan, Shwasan, Pralapan, Visrujan, Grinhan, Unmishan, Nimishan, Api. Eating, drinking, going, coming, breathing, blinking of the eye. The person knows. Navadware Pure Dehi, the person sitting in this citadel of 9 gates, Naiva kurvan na karayan. Even though the person is going and coming, the person says nobody is going, nobody is coming. Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, my understanding of Maya is that that's exactly the Maya confusion.
Yeah, but here there's not confusion. Here is a person who, from the verses quoted here, the person has knowledge, self-knowledge. These are from chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita. The person who has self-knowledge is saying, I am going, I am coming, I am eating, I am drinking, while not doing anything. Karmani akarmayah pashyet, akarmani chakarmayah, sa buddhiman manushyeshu, sa yuktah, sa kritsna karma krit. So the one who sees action in non-action and the one who sees non-action in action is the one who is the enlightened person. That is what the Bhagavad Gita says. So our definitions of action itself is flawed. We think sitting simply is non-action, but that's an action. Because wherever there is will there is an action. We think desisting from making a choice to do an action is not an action, but it's an action because my volition was there. This is what Bhagavad Gita says. And sometimes the action is non-action. Like when you're coming in a boat from this side and then you see the trees on the other side appearing to move. They're not really moving. So this is the buddhiman. So the one who sees oneself as non-actor in and through everything that one has to do. Because it cannot be, we cannot conflate the two orders of reality. The body still is there, needing to be taken care of. It demands to be fed several times a day. It needs roti. So that's why in the Bhandara they say what? Roti Ram. So that we see it as Rama, at least at this level. So the roti is needed, but I am not the eater. And so who is the eater? There is no really eater. We can say Bhagavan. We can say Brahman, but Brahman doesn't act. So this is the paradox. It's when you know that Maya is ultimately Brahman, Mithya is Brahman, then Mithya becomes enjoyable. If we don't know, then Mithya becomes painful to live in. Okay? All right. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadagya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.